Welcome back. So one has to be careful how one articulates this title. If you say it too fast, you might get tongue-tied and say something you don't want to say. But I think the concept is the same. So thank you for joining me for the next several minutes to talk about how we can really maximize the resources that are available to us as family historians, as family history detectives. And again, my aspiration, I hope and I pray that this isn't pedestrian or in any way too general, but I feel, as I've articulated a couple times today already, my 40 plus years of experience helping family historians be successful or as successful as they can be, I've learned a lot, and I'm a student of human nature, so I'm always learning. I know this sounds kind of trite, but oh my goodness, the internet continues to impact our lives in so many ways. I don't want to rip too many things from today's headline, or headlines, I should say, but all that happens in society as a general rule also happens in the corner of society or the corner of the world that is family history and family story and genealogy. So I almost hate to use the term because it's been so abused here in the United States, but the whole concept of fake news, the whole concept of, well, it's on the internet, it must be right. No, believe it or not, we still have customers here in the United States that when they're citing their source for a particular piece of information, guess what their source is? The internet. Not a source. It's a vehicle to get to information. So as you can see on the screen, I still very earnestly and passionately believe that the internet is a tool, and a very powerful tool. What we need to be as practitioners, as family historians, we need to be able to use that tool successfully. I think the power of the internet is potentially underutilized because we chase sometimes a lot of shiny objects instead of being more focused and more intentional in our research. And I think we can develop at least some general strategies to help us be more successful in using this really powerful tool. In a previous presentation, I just did some quick screenshots of Google searches. Google searches most times will return a huge amount of data that really can't be digested, can't really very successfully be understood or used. Oftentimes with search engines, we should be using the advanced search, which I call the best search, because it helps us be more intentional in our searching. But let's move on. What's our approach to the internet? I think, and I hope again I'm not painting with too broad of a brush, but so often we go to the Uber sites, and there's some wonderful big Uber sites. Family Search, Find My Past, oh my goodness, Ancestry, the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. Oh my goodness, Ancestry only has 20 billion searchable records online. MyHeritage only has 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 billion records online. That's huge. But as large as those data sets are, even if there was no overlap, and we know there is overlap, there's so much in what I call in that first bullet point there, there's so much data in sites of lesser star value. There are things, and I'm just using this as a gross example, and I apologize for the immodesty, but there are things on the Allen County Public Library site in Fort Wayne, Indiana, United States, in our 4.5 million, not billion, 4.5 million, that no other place has. No way, not Ancestry, not Family Search, not Find My Past, not MyHeritage. Nobody has it. Why? Because we focus on collecting at the local level, and we're not unique. Thousands, tens of thousands of repositories have all kinds of data that we need to be intentional about going after, because if we just go to Ancestry, or we just Google, or we just go to Find My Past, we're not going to find everything that we need. Arguably, we won't find most things that we need. The big sites, they're in the space because they're good at what they do. And we're grateful for that. I don't think I can imagine a world here in North America without Ancestry. I know there are people that think that Find My Past, same thing. Really important, really consequential data. But that's not all. It's just not all. So we need to focus on what that second bullet point says, finding relevant data sets. So search everywhere. The mega sites, the big sites, of course. But let's develop a strategy, and I hope to share that with you, of finding things on lesser star values, smaller websites. If we focus on what I call research data instead of surname data, and you'll see a slide in a moment where I will show you 5 what I call research keys. We should deploy those keys or those terms all the time, not just search for a surname. I don't mean to pick on Ancestry, but they are the 800-pound gorilla in the room, so it's a nice target. Let's call it an easy target. Again, I can't imagine a world without Ancestry, without that huge amount of data. But what's the last thing that Ancestry wants to give you when you put in a search term? The last thing Ancestry wants to give you is 0 results. So what are they going to do? They're going to create algorithms that you and I can't see, nor can we necessarily fully understand. They're going to return lots of hits, because then we get excited. Oh, look at all this great information. So this evening, when you're done with the first day of the expo, go to some of the mega websites and put in crazy or nonsensical search terms. I didn't do it today or this week. I should have. My apologies. But I oftentimes search Ancestry for things like Humpty Dumpty or The Little Prince, just to see what kind of search results come back. And last time I checked, which was about a quarter of a year ago when the United States was largely locked down because of COVID-19, I searched for Humpty Dumpty in Ancestry. And you know what? I got over 1,200 hits, 1,200 results. Did any of them really match Humpty Dumpty? No, but the algorithm doesn't want me to get no results. Why do I mention this? We need to be sharp practitioners using the tools to our best advantage. So lesser star value, and really kind of push and pull and prod and poke and explore these mega sites and try to understand how to search to get better search results. So I call it the name game. And I know I'm painting with a bit of a broad brush here, but how do we use online genealogical tools and data? How do we use that? I fear that most of us fall into that name game trap. We search for the surnames that we're interested in, and we get so many hits, so many results back that we say, well, this is way more than I have time to digest, to analyze, so that's all I'm ever going to do. But there are 4 more research keys we'll get to in a moment. Again, do we use the big sites? So maybe a more succinct slide is here. We should look for larger relevant data sets with current links, source data, so data that tells you where they got it, context and historical data. I know sometimes in our zeal and our quest to find as much information about our families as we can, and we know we never have enough time to do our own family research, we again take the middle of the road and only that, and don't go to either side, don't explore context. Some consider it a waste of time, and I'm sorry to say that, to look at context. But every once in a while, we should push pause on our research for a particular family, trying to get back to the next generation and say, what else can I learn about the family, the ancestors that I know, and do I have as much information about them as I can? Usually in creating that bigger, that more robust context, we're going to get more actionable data, more data that we can use in search engines, that we can use to direct us in our research, than if we just continue to focus on that surname. As I mentioned in a previous presentation, look for opportunities to vet or to have our research juried. So when we're searching online, none of the mega sites have that as an option. Like, hey, I'm looking for Witchers and Shooks and Englerts and Gogels who came from Germany, who settled in southern Indiana. Have I found all the sources? Do we ever look for opportunities to that are research. These are the 5 research keys. I never put surname at the top because I think people will just stop there. So when we're searching, and it's kind of difficult sometimes with Ancestry and MyHeritage and Find My Past to search by location, but play around with advanced search. Play around with what possible searches you can have. It's really interesting. If you know that your family has been a solid generation or 3 or 4 or 5 generations in a particular area, you need to know as much about that area as you possibly can. So my number 1 key or search term is always geographic location. How can I find everything that's online for that town, that county, that parish, that region, everything. Second, as I mentioned previously, ethnicity, ancestral origin is so important. How can I find data on Germans? How can I find data? I mean, it's a great challenge. I know some researchers who have Polish ancestors don't think it's great at all, but Poland, the boundaries change so much. It is a country, then it wasn't a country, then it was a country again. So knowing Poland and that whole geographic area, really important. Knowing that ancestral origin, Polish, and being able to really search for that data, huge, absolutely huge in our success if we have Polish ancestors. Just searching for surnames oftentimes isn't going to get us everything we need. Third bullet point, third research key, obviously, surname. It's important, but I fear that's all many of us do. Religion and occupation are the final 2 search keys. Maybe not as valuable as place and ethnicity, but look for opportunities to find people who practice a particular religion if that's part of your family story, if that's part of your ancestors' context. I also always want to say, don't necessarily be blinded by religion practice today, because we know in many areas of the world, religion depended upon A, what was allowed, or B, in North America, oftentimes in colonial time periods, centuries ago, religion was more dictated by language than by theological belief. What do I mean by that? So Catholics and Lutherans are fairly close. Methodist Episcopal, sort of close. But if a first or second generation immigrant could go to a church and hear a service in her or his birth language, that was huge. That was more important in many areas, more important than doctrine. So that's why I include this in search keys. Here in 2020, here in 2020, there is one Catholic parish about 90 minutes from where I'm sitting right now that every Sunday has a mass in Polish in the 21st century. Why? Chain migration for more than a century brought people from Poland to this part of Indiana. That's why religion's so important. So I hope that makes sense. I know it sounds pretty pedestrian, but I think we need to practice that. So what is a successful searching strategy? You're going to see a couple things that'll look, again, pretty pedestrian, but I think they're tried and true. So in a previous presentation, I mentioned the stop, drop, and roll. I just believe in it so passionately. When we're doing research, when we're being good historical detectives, somewhere early on when we are hypothesizing about the next generation back, when we're hypothesizing, we kind of got the great-great-grandparents, now we're going after the great-great-great-grandparents. Try to find that geographic area as specifically as possible and focus in on that. When I say focus in, I mean see about the large mega sites. How can I find all the records they have for that area? Focus on what repositories, what churches, what university, what civil, governmental organizations are in that area or kept records for that area. Focus as geographically tight as possible, and then build larger and larger what I call geographic circles out from your initial focus area. I hope that makes sense. So laser focus in and then start building larger and larger circles. And I'll show you a grid in a moment that we just very briefly looked at earlier today. Once you build these larger and larger geographic circles, be aware of what I call organizational foci. So the various organizations that are around, what's their focus? Who retains, or which one retains which records? Where is data stored? How can I get access to that? So instead of being so driven by, I need a MyHeritage subscription, or I need to find my past subscription, or I need a subscription to Family Search. Oh wait, that's free. You don't need a subscription to that. Focus in on how can your research needs be met. And there's an amazing amount of good data out there for free. And not saying that the paid sites should be ignored, not at all, because they are doing for us what, a couple generations ago we couldn't do. So big deal there. Here's a grid that I showed earlier, and I want to spend just a few more minutes on it because I think it's that important. I call it the information retention scheme or hierarchy. And this is a little bit of broad brush, but I'm hoping that it kind of plants a seed in your mind if you haven't thought about things this way. So where my cursor is kind of moving right now, here on the left-hand side, again, broad brush, these are three pretty general classes of material. But we'll find these worldwide. Published material, that someone has done some research or not. Some people I know kind of have a little bit of fact and a lot of lore and a lot of conjecture in their family histories. And that makes it hard for us as researchers to use that as a source. But published material, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is of consequence to our research, and we should seek that out with our brains turned on and our eyes wide open. So published materials. Second down that left-hand column, official governmental records. So who retains the tax records, the census records, the school records, the wills, the probates, the vital records? When a jurisdiction says, okay, starting on this date, you must record your death records. On this other date, you must start recording your marriage records. There are entities that house and provide access, sometimes with a lot of hassle, to these official governmental records. And then at the very bottom, the bottom left-hand square, unpublished material. Oftentimes we as family historians, I fear, and I think my fear is at least quasi-justified, we don't pay a whole lot of attention to published materials because, or I should say unpublished materials, because if they're not governmental and they're not sort of nicely organized in something that's published, the big information aggregators don't like to mess with them a lot. And sometimes as researchers, we don't like to mess with them either. We don't like to use them because it's more difficult. Things aren't lined up nicely for us. So broad brush categories, but things that we want to engage as good family history detectives. So at the local level, wherever your locale is, I have a North American focus for my presentations. That's where my expertise is at. But this is applicable worldwide. So previous slide, when I said to focus in geographically, wherever your specific geographic focus is there a local library that's available to the public? A town library, some kind of library that's available to the public. And maybe the local library is actually a college or a university library. So when someone goes to university, there's usually a sizable library there. It tends to focus on the curriculum of the university. But I've been in so many college libraries, big, so many universities, small, where they have a local focus. So check there. Any publicly available library. Check for what? Check for all 5 of those. Do they possibly have something on my surname because the family's been here so long, because the family was prominent, because the family was famous or notorious? There might be something there. Check for geographic material. Check for that religion, ethnicity, occupation. So that's at the local level. Check at the local level for local courthouses or archives, small a archives, that retain local records. Typically, high percentage of the time, they're run by the government, whatever the government is, the local government or the federal or national government, again, worldwide. In more democratic countries, more access in more authoritarian countries, a lot more government control. And then as you skate down this second column here at the very bottom where it says historical societies, look for local historical organizations. And maybe I should have used the word organization instead of society. Look for a local organization that is keeping records about that geographic area. They could be records of masons. It could be records of stone carvers, of bell ringers. All those might be places where we can find evidence of our ancestors. So this local column, so think wherever your research is in the world, are there small local public university college libraries, courthouses for governmental records, local archives, something controlled, for lack of a better term, by the government, and then these local historical societies. And then move up to the next geographic place, which is bigger libraries, state or regional archives, and then state historical societies. So really of great consequence. And then move again over to the far right, national libraries, national major libraries. In the United States, the Library of Congress is our national library. Bibliotheca in France and Spain. We'll talk tomorrow about WorldCat, worldcat.org. Oh my goodness, it taps into the metadata, the bibliographic data in libraries, 10,000 of them all over the world, and it helps us fill in this category here. Look for the country of your interest, their national archives. It may not be called national archives, but look for a similar federal level entity that's going to collect records that help identify individuals and what they were doing in their lives. And then down here in this bottom corner, special focus collections or organizations. And by special focus, I mean some of those 5 keys, right? Is there a large religious library where all the records of the Society of Friends? In the United States, there's 2 universities, Swarthmore College and Earlham College. They are the national repositories for Society of Friends, Quaker records. You need to know that if you're looking for trying to engage in Quaker research. I have to put in a small immodest plug. Many Quaker records that are at Earlham, we have an agreement with them to create preservation photocopies if we get to have a copy in Fort Wayne. So again, as a good historical detective, we'll know that. So we're going to walk through this as time permits. I'll probably go a little quickly, but I just wanted to show you examples of what I'm talking about. And again, a North American focus. So we're going to start over here in the local level with these local public libraries. And I picked libraries. I have a couple slides from our library, but I picked libraries that have a really small focus to show you how much gold there is, figuratively speaking, in entities that are not the big websites, but entities that really put together some neat local information. So the local public library websites, they tend to collect and preserve published information, as you could see from the grid, but they do serve as a repository sometimes for primary source material if a church, an archive, an organization, a business doesn't want to or doesn't have space to store their local records. And public entities are very much about making that information available, unlike some other entities. So good places to do it. So a couple of screenshots here from small regional library in North Carolina on the east coast of North America. They don't have a lot, but oh my goodness, what they have no one else has. So down here they have a few digitization projects, World War II scrapbook. I'm not going to show you their genealogy resources because their genealogy resources is still one static page from 2009. So, obviously not a big focus for that, but so here's their scrapbook. So they focus on schools. Yes, we sigh deeply because a lot of these individuals are not identified, but every once in a while you'll find someone identified, and maybe as you go back to that site, if it's in your research focus, you'll find more and more people identified. Here's their World War scrapbook where they have, I know it's a lousy looking slide, but they have veterans and a little bio about the veterans. If that's your area of geographic focus, how can you not like that? Here's just a screenshot from Allen County Records that we put on our website for free. There's about 4.5 million, not billion, but million links to records and information about Allen County, Indiana, because that's the county we live in, that's the county we exist in, that's the county that pays taxes for our existence. So we're going to have Allen County material here. That same thing is in many, many, many other jurisdictions. So there's a lot of information there. McCracken County, Kentucky. It's maybe a couple hours drive south of here. It's a very small public library. And even this public library has, you know, digital collections. Look on the left-hand side. These are all special collections just for that county. Any named collection is one that we as researchers want to take a look at. And I think I went too fast. You can browse and read their little special collections online. Another library, I've never been to your fine city. I had hoped to be there for this wonderful expo, but life didn't happen that way. But I'm guessing that the Garrett Public Library would fit easily inside a portion of your great expo center there. The Garrett Public Library, though, because it's a small, tiny community, they worked out a deal with newspaper in the area, which almost never happens with the big newspapers, where they have an obituary index on their website for free, and it links directly to the actual obituary. I know that sounds like a small thing, but those of you who have done newspaper research and know how hard it can be to get copyrighted newspapers to publish things online. They usually want a lot of money for that. Just my focus on explore these public libraries. So the success in using public libraries, look for their online catalogs, use their Ask service. I turned that red because most every public library in the world has some kind of way that you can electronically communicate with their staff. Hey, if we do that judiciously, prudently, meaning don't spill out our entire family story while we're trying to ask a question, just ask the question, we get a lot of important information. When you're exploring their website, this is the only place on the internet, I believe, where you can click on adult services and not get into trouble. So just remember that. Otherwise, don't want to be clicking on adult services. But that's what they call where their local history collections are, where their geographically named collections are, where their special collections are. Look for links for other significant data sets and look for links for other libraries. I'm going to have to pick up the pace just a bit if we're going to have some time for questions. So moving out geographically from local public to more of state or regional libraries. State libraries in North America are like the public library, only for a bigger geographic area. So they have a lot of neat things just for folks who are interested in the history and the contemporary activities of the state. A lot of genealogy and local history files, a lot of indices. Sometimes we're frustrated as researchers because we're kind of been spoiled by Ancestry and My Heritage and Find My Past. When you click on something, you get an image. But a lot of these just have indexes or abstracts. But that's more than nothing, right? And they usually have material that others don't. So the Indiana State Library, there's all kinds of collections. And I just took a screenshot of collections and services. Here's the entire state of Indiana. We're right up here in the Allen County area. You click on any one of these counties and you get a list of cemeteries, court records, maps, directories, newspaper holdings. Here's the newspaper holdings for Huntington County. Throughout anywhere in the United States, you can get these loaned, and there are international loans as well, a little more difficult. Here's some of their special collections from people who have served in the military from Indiana. Many state and federal entities have these kind of records. Just an example of the Maine State Library on the other side of the country. You know, what's one of their big feature? Sharing stories of Maine people and places. Isn't that what we do? We're searching for our people and places. Here's some links to some of their free online data. Not as robust as Ancestry, of course, but it's really focused. It's focused on Maine, Maine's people. Success in using state libraries, remember their Uber collections. City directories, county histories, and newspapers. Oh my goodness, the things we can get out of directories and histories and newspapers. Most states in North America try to have all that's been published for their geographic area. Use the online catalog, explore links to other libraries. State archives, they capture governmental data, preserve it, and try to make it available. I know they're not quite as liberal in making things available as other entities, but it's worth a look. More and more of them have guides and calendars, if you will, indexes and abstracts online, and growing digital collections. I'm going to say this sort of tongue-in-cheek, so if anyone's an archivist in there, don't get too upset with me. But one of the reasons that push archivists to put more material online, they want to see less of us because we're kind of the outlier, annoying customer that asks lots of questions. And maybe in New Zealand, you have ones that enjoy questions more than some of the archivists in other corners of the world. But they put things online because they would like us to use the online instead of bothering the busy work that they tend to do. I know it's a lousy contrast, but that's the color of the Illinois State Archive website. They're one of the few archives in North America that actually use the G word on their website. They actually use the word genealogical. It's almost heresy amongst certified archivists to do that. But they have a list of their databases, a heavy military focus, all of these various birth, marriage, death indexes. They do a great job of partnering with other organizations, including the Illinois State Genealogical Society. So this is just a screenshot of their marriage index. They have a servitude index for African Americans who were enslaved in other parts of the country, came as servants and were freed in Illinois. So a lot of really meaningful information, as well as descriptive pamphlets of their state census records, African American records. They have a regional repository system. You can spend a lot of time getting familiar with the Illinois State Archives, and then you have some success in using them. Maine State Archives has a pretty blah page, but oh my goodness. All these are clickable links over here. Early census records. So this is a census from 1766 colonial period. And it's an actual enumeration that you can scroll through online for free. And then they link to the Missouri Digital Archive, which has all kinds of information. Our military ancestors are held in very high regard, and you'll find a lot of military information on most all of that information retention grid that I showed you just a few minutes ago. Here in North America, particularly in the United States, we have this saying, and this is why context is so important: every generation the possibility. So from the early 1700s to present, every generation there exists a possibility that if you had an ancestor here, he would have been directly affected or served in the military. That's pretty amazing, and makes military records so very important. Maryland State Archives, just flipping through some screenshots to show you the variety. We as family historians, we look for the things we can access for free, and then we look for the catalogs and the calendars where we can look up the geographic town, burg that we're interested in, the religion, the occupation, the surname, the ethnic group. You can find a lot of really good information. Growing number of searchable databases. Our success is finding and using those. That third bullet point, mine the information about state agencies. There's an amazing number of neat things that you'll find in state archives that may not have hit your radar before. Just one quick example, in the United States, most of the homes for blind and deaf children, as well as disabled veterans, were run by the government. And you say, yeah, big deal, Curt. Well, in the records of these entities that were published, you have the name of the blind child or the handicapped child and their parents and where they lived and whether their parents were so afflicted. Sometimes you have nativity information, not only for the disabled child, but for their parents as well. It's pretty interesting. What's that old saying? You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't look for it, you may miss it. State historical societies, regional historical societies, many of these organizations run these special projects, like here in the States, Centennial Farms, Pioneer Homestead, Veterans Histories, County Historians. They will try anything, and I laud them for this, to raise people's awareness about the history of their particular corner of the world. And they have some amazing pieces of information. Kansas Historical Society in the middle of our continent, all kinds of early records, all kinds of military records from Civil War, Spanish-American War, the two wars of the 20th century. They're mostly indices, but it gives us enough information that we can write for original records. There's a map of Kansas. You can pick the county you're interested in, click on that county, and get manuscript collections you can read online for free about activities, individuals, basically sharing the history of that county. Kentucky Historical Society does a similar thing. Here's some of their collections online. So state historical societies help us explore the history of the state, have some government documents, there's calendars, guides, etc. that we can use. If we're going to go to state historical societies, we should go to state genealogical societies as well. Really, any genealogical society that in any way covers the geographic area that you're interested in, whether specifically or generally, is worth exploring. So if you have any kin, as an example, that came through Indiana, which was called the Crossroads of the United States, you'll want to pause a while and take a look at the records. Pretty plain homepage, have to admit that, but there are 2,317 databases, and about 10% of those are in front of the paywall, in front of the membership wall, which is a tortured way of saying they're free. So you can go to the website, and you can search a couple hundred databases for free, and you can see where other things might be of use to you to join and become a member. Church records, college records, county records, military, you can see over in that right-hand column there, the types of records that they collect and publish online. Some for free, most for fee. You have to be a member. The Ohio Genealogical Society is the largest one in North America, 7,000 members, and their website has a lot of information. Most of it is behind the membership wall, but at least you get an idea, and they have some free databases available. We're going to quickly go to Florida, where their Pioneer Descendant Certificate Program lists the pioneer, where they settled, who the descendant is. Again, some actionable items if we have a surname or a family that's living in that county. Our success in using state societies, a lot of good publications, identify projects and learning opportunities, and a lot of collaboration goes on. The USGenWeb and GenWeb projects, if you're not familiar, take the opportunity every once in a while just to, I call them insomnia busting experience. If you can't get to sleep some night, for whatever reason, get up, don't wake up your partner, don't wrestle the cats and the dogs or anyone else, get on the computer, great connectivity, play around with some of these sites. So one of the state in the United States that has the largest number of counties, minor jurisdictions, Texas, like 70 counties. The Texas GenWeb, this is just an example of one county. They paint you a little bit of history, then they give you a records page. Many of these records will link you back to Family Search, so it's a quick way to get into that free site, Family Search. And some of them will link you to other records that are digitized copies of indices. So here's some vital record indexes, and we'll just click on some marriages, and there's a digitized index to the Brazos County marriages. So kind of like your own personal library through World GenWeb and the USGenWeb. So my home county of Du Bois, Indiana, all the federal census records, the actual images. You don't have to pay Ancestry or anyone else for it. If this is your county, you just click on the year you're interested in and you can page through that. A lot of them have indices to those as well. So the GenWeb links to significant data. Most of the data is provided by people in the area who should know about the area, which is awesome. And increasingly, collections are linked to digital images, and that's great. So I know I've moved through that pretty quickly, but I just wanted to maybe provide some verification of why that grid, that focusing tightly geographically and then building out that circle of repositories, why that's so consequential. I want to spend just a few moments on what I call strategy plus, just to see if you can entice yourself, encourage yourself, challenge yourself to see if there is one of these entities where you are researching, wherever in the world you're researching. So here in North America, there's an organization, some of you may have heard of it. They are the ones that created and maintain WorldCat, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. They also have what's called the National Union Catalog of Manuscript Collections, this nutmuck right here. Most of it is centered on North America. So if you're doing French research or Portuguese research or New Zealand research, you're not going to find much at all in nutmuck. But is there an entity that has cataloged for the purposes of making more people aware of manuscript collections? Remember that grid where we talked about special focus libraries and we talked about unpublished material? If you can get a hold of a bibliographic database, that's just like a database of metadata, where you can look for manuscript collections by geographic location, by surname, by ethnicity, by religion, by occupation, that can be a real boost to your research. So if you're researching in the United States, nutmuck is great. Look for those other types of bibliographic databases. We have a lot of databases, WorldCat as an example, for books, for published material. Not as many for that bottom line of that grid, not for as many for the unpublished manuscript. National Archives of the United States, as with most federal government entities, federal government anywhere in the world, bureaucracy is the name of the game. And no, I'm not being critical on a Saturday afternoon in New Zealand. I'm just being honest. We have great relationships with all kinds of archives. And oh my goodness, do they really love bureaucracy? If there's like a tortured, elongated, painful way to do something, they will embrace it. Toot sweet, right smart. But here's the big but. They have so many records of importance to us as researchers. So go to their websites. That's another what I call insomnia busting experience. Go to the website and just see what kind of online presence do they have. Do they have an IM, instant messaging, text service, email service, something that I can find out what's there. The National Archives of the United States has a pretty good website. Whenever they get a hankering, they'll try to improve it for us, which makes it for a while a little less discoverable, but it is what it is. Look for your national archives. If you've never explored them for whatever region of the world that you're researching, you might be surprised. GPO Access, what in the world is that? It stands for Government Printing Office, and here in the United States, it's the arm of the federal government that makes federal records more available by publishing them. Look for that same thing in whatever area of the world you are researching. Your more totalitarian governments won't have such an enhanced or vibrant government publishing office. They kind of constrict that. Look for the national libraries. Here in the United States, it's the Library of Congress. Look for the national libraries where your research is centered. My youngest son, who's now 31, I had him when I was 5. He was over in France working on his PhD a couple of times last year, and he didn't believe his old man when I told him, you know, these national libraries, they're amazing. And lo and behold, he came back telling me just how amazing. Did I know how amazing these national libraries were? So yes, they're amazing. And a lot of them have excellent catalogs. All of them have some kind of catalog that's online. So you and I as researchers, we can access those. Linkpendium is more focused on surnames and the United States. So it's surnames worldwide. So go to linkpendium.com. There's like 9 million links to surnames worldwide. It's kind of a neat way of finding things. This last thing here, werelate.org, our library partnered with the Foundation for Online Genealogy, and don't get your hopes up about that. It really is an outlier in this list, but I put it there as an example of things we should look for. Our library and one other foundation decided we're going to try to encourage other libraries in North America to stop putting things in their vertical file that no one has access to. If it's copyright clear or you can get permission, scan it and put it online so everybody worldwide can have access to it. There are projects like this popping up all over the world. I think there's a couple in the British Isles. I know one in Ireland. So look for these sort of virtual vertical files where it's kind of a hodgepodge of information, but it's unique stuff. And most all of these sites have a search engine attached to it that you're able to discover that information. Want to close and then provide some time for questions with a shout out to Family Search. As the last bullet point there says, I believe, and have believed this for a long time, it is the site and the organization to watch. Full disclosure, I am not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, so this isn't me pushing my religion on you. We have a very great relationship. We have a Family Search scanning station in our library. Our library and maybe about a dozen other university and public libraries and the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, over the last several years, we have contributed more than 500,000 family and local history, so surname and geographic location, that are available online for free. A lot of the family histories written about families in North America have direct ties to other places in the world because we're a pretty young, a pretty new country. First bullet point there, billions and billions of names. Second bullet point I just talked about. Sometimes I like to walk into a presentation and say, did you know that every one of you has a personal library of more than 500,000 items? And I could have said that to you because you can go to that website, you can read the book online, you can search through the book if it's OCRable, optical character recognition, and you can download it. I don't know why anyone would want to download, excuse me, 500,000 books, but if you wanted to, if you had a couple petabyte servers, maybe you could all fit it all in, but oh my goodness, there's gold in there. We're adding books and other church records, civil records all the time. It really is the world's largest online genealogical catalog. Not the largest collection. Ancestry is the top at 20 billion plus. Really want to emphasize for just a moment the Family Search Wiki. About 93,000 entries in the Family Search Wiki. I call this, when I speak to librarians and archivists, mostly librarians, I call this our research assistant. I don't know a whole lot about researching in Poland. I don't know a whole lot about researching in Louisiana, which is a southern state in the United States. I'll have to admit, and I hope I don't upset anyone, my knowledge of records and record repositories in New Zealand, pretty thin. If I needed to know, first best place, the Family Search Wiki. And you don't have to log in. I know Family Search for a couple years now has required a free login to get to records, etc. The Family Search Wiki, almost 100,000 juried contributions. You can go to any region of the world, any country, any state, any ethnic group, and they'll tell you how to get to records in their catalog and records in their collection. They'll tell you about records maintained by that jurisdiction. There's a special section in every geographic wiki page in the Family Search Wiki that tells you where the online records are, which are fee and which are free. It's an amazing tool. And I'm always amazed when I speak with librarians how many of us, librarians and archivists, don't use it. It's like, oh my goodness, we can't know everything. And with each passing hour, we can know less and less as so much more becomes available. So find ways of helping our customers. And so I'm thinking if very few librarians know about it, I wonder how many researchers and practitioners of family history know about it. If you haven't used it, try it. There's an old saying, try it, you'll like it. It's worth your while. So the world really is at our fingertips. Sometimes it's going to take a little work to find it because there's a whole lot at our fingertips. But focusing our attention and having a consistent strategy of doing more than surname surfing will pay some big dividends for us.